Daddy, is this a castle?
Close to it, Bug.
This is a place of business, Caleb, not a daycare. And lose the hat pay, it looks ridiculous. It's a beautiful crown. You keep it right where it is. This area is for members. You can't be here.
Let go of her arm.
The club has an image. A maintenance man's daughter gawking in a paper hat hound, like some little beggar.
It's okay, Daddy. It was ugly anyway.
This is the best crown I have ever seen. You made it with your own hands.
The rain came soft that evening, the kind that doesn't fall so much as settle, beating on the shoulders of a man who stood at the edge of the country club's circular drive and looked up at all that light. Chandeliers burned gold behind tall glass. The wet slate underfoot threw the glow back up at him, scattered and broken, like coins spilled across the ground. He wore a work jacket gone soft at the elbows, the collar mended with crooked stitches by a hand that no longer stitched anything. In his pocket, a folded paper. In his chest, a quiet that most people mistook for nothing at all. The valet looked through him. The doorman's eyes slid past. Not one of them knew the truth that sat plain as the rain. The ground beneath their polished shoes belonged to him, and the lease on all of it expired at midnight. His name was Caleb, and he had come only to fix a leaking gutter. Caleb had been fixing things at the Hollow Creek Country Club for going on 11 years, long before the new management, long before the marble was laid over the old oak floors, long before a young man named Blake arrived with a clipboard and a way of speaking that made the older staff feel suddenly like furniture. Caleb knew the building the way a man knows the body of someone he loves. He knew which pipe knocked when the cold came. He knew the third step on the service stair had a soft spot you had to skip. He knew the boiler needed a firm hand on the left valve and a gentler one on the right, or it would sulk all night. He knew these things because he had built half of them with his own 2 hands, back when the club was smaller and the land around it was only land. That was the thing nobody at Hollow Creek understood about Caleb, and he never told them, because telling wasn't in him. The 200 acres the club sat upon, the golf greens rolling green and cruel toward the tree line, the pond they'd stocked with imported fish, the parking lot, the tennis courts, the long gravel road that wound up from the county highway. All of it had belonged to his family for 3 generations. His grandfather had grazed cattle there. His father had sold the mineral rights to keep the family fed through a hard decade and held onto the dirt out of stubbornness and love. And Caleb, when his father passed, had leased the surface to the men who wanted to build a club on it, because Anna had been sick by then, and the lease money paid for the treatments that were supposed to save her. They hadn't saved her. Nothing had. 2 years now she'd been gone, and Caleb wore his grief the way he wore the jacket. Quietly, every day, mended where it had torn. He kept working at the club after the lease was signed because a man has to fill his hours, and because the money the surface lease brought in was slow and yearly, and a house with a growing child in it needs money that comes every Friday. So he took wages from the very men who paid to stand on his ground, and he never said a word about it, and he fixed their gutters and their boilers and their broken things, and he was glad enough to have somewhere to be that wasn't the empty side of his bed. Tonight, the gutter over the west terrace had come loose and was pouring a sheet of water across the walk where the members would pass on their way to the spring gala. Blake had called him in on his day off, and Caleb had come, because that was who he was, and because his daughter Lily was 7 years old and thought the country club was the most beautiful place in the world, and she had begged to come along and see the lights. She stood beside him now, under the eave, small in her second-hand coat, holding a paper crown she had made in school that afternoon. Gold-painted, cut careful with the round-tip scissors, the points a little crooked. She had worn it all day. She wore it now, tilted on her dark hair, and she looked up at the great glowing building with her mouth open. "Daddy," she whispered, "is this a castle?" "Close to it, Bug," he said, and he took her small cold hand in his large warm one, and they went around the side, toward the service door, the way he always went. The service door opened into a world the members never saw. A narrow hall lit by a fluorescent tube that buzzed and flickered. The smell of bleach and hot dishwater. The clatter of the kitchen through a swinging door. And it was here, in the plain and honest belly of the beautiful place, that Caleb was known. "Caleb!" Rosa came around the corner, with a stack of folded linens taller than her head, and her whole tired face lifted. Rosa had run the club's laundry and linen for 19 years. She had hands cracked from bleach, and a back that ached, and a photograph of 3 grandchildren taped inside her locker. "And who is this queen you brought me?" "This is Lily," Caleb said. "Lily? This is Miss Rosa." Lily, suddenly shy, pressed against her father's leg. But Rosa set down her linens and crouched, knees popping, and said, "That is the finest crown I have seen in all my years at this club, and I have seen a lot of crowns come through these doors, and most of them were on the wrong heads." She winked. Lily giggled. That was how it went at the service door. Danny, the young dishwasher, 19, and saving for community college, ducked out to give Lily a maraschino cherry in a paper cup, the sweet kind, and told her it was a secret between the two of them. Priya, who kept the club's books in a windowless office and worried out loud about her mother's medicine, stopped to admire the crown and to slip Caleb a paper bag with 2 rolls in it, still warm. "You didn't eat," she said, before he could argue. "I can tell. Take them." They were kind to him, these people. Not because they knew what he owned. They didn't. They were kind because kindness was simply what they did, worn smooth by hard lives, into something like instinct, the way water wears a stone. And Caleb, who had learned in 2 years of grief that the world could go cold as January stone, felt the warmth of it every time, and never let on how much he needed it. He was up the ladder, working the gutter loose, Lily holding the base the way he'd taught her, when the fluorescent hall filled with a different kind of presence. Blake. The manager came through the swinging door with his tablet in one hand, and his eyes already narrowed. He was not a large man, nor a loud one. His cruelty had no theater in it. It was managerial, precise, delivered in a level voice, and it was somehow worse for that. He surveyed the hall the way a man surveys a spreadsheet, looking for the number that's wrong. "Rosa," he said, not unkindly, not kindly. "The terrace linens are late." He didn't wait for an answer. His eyes had found the child. "Whose is this?" Caleb came down the ladder. "Mine. She's with me. She's not in the way." Blake looked at Lily for a moment, the way a man looks at a stain on a carpet he intends to have replaced. "This is a place of business, Caleb, not a daycare. We have members arriving in an hour." He turned the tablet toward himself, made a note with one finger. "I need the terrace dry, and I need you gone before the first car pulls up. The members don't want to see the mechanics of things. They want the magic. You understand?" "I understand," Caleb said, even and low. "I'll be done before they come. See that you are." Blake's gaze drifted once more to the paper crown on Lily's head, and something in his mouth tightened, as though the small gold thing offended him. "And lose the hat, would you? It looks ridiculous." He was gone before Caleb could answer, back through the swinging door into the world of chandeliers. Lily's hand went up to the crown. Her fingers found the crooked points. She looked at her father, and her face was doing the thing a child's face does when it's deciding whether it's allowed to be hurt. "It's a beautiful crown," Caleb said quietly. "You keep it right where it is." But he saw her fingers move. He saw her, a moment later, slip the crown off her dark hair and fold it, careful, careful, along the seams she'd made, and tuck it into the pocket of her second-hand coat, where no one could say it looked ridiculous, where it would be safe. Caleb turned back to the ladder so she wouldn't see his face. He had fixed 1,000 things in this building. He did not know how to fix that. He worked faster now. The rain had thickened and the light was going, the long blue dusk coming down over the greens that his grandfather had once walked behind a plow. He sent Lily to sit on the milk crate by the warm kitchen vent, out of the wet, and she went, small and quiet, her hand pressed to the pocket where the crown was hidden. It was while he was up there, hands numb on the cold aluminum, that he heard the second thing. The office door cracked open. Blake's level voice. restructuring the whole service staff after the gala. The linen contract, the kitchen, the books. We can get all of it cheaper through the agency in the city. I want it lean by month's end. A pause. Priya, don't look at me like that. It's numbers. It was always going to be numbers. Sentiment is a luxury this club can't afford. And Priya's voice, smaller than Caleb had ever heard it. My mother's medicine comes out of this job, Mr. Blake. Then I'd suggest you update your resume. The door closed. Caleb stood on the ladder in the rain and did not move for a long moment. Below him, through the lit service window, he could see them. Rosa folding linens with her cracked hands. Danny at the sink, sleeves rolled, scrubbing at a pot with everything he had. Priya, standing very still in the hall, one hand pressed flat against the wall, as if the building might otherwise fall on her. His people, on his ground, about to be swept out like the rainwater he was clearing from the walk. And they didn't know, none of them knew, that the man on the ladder, the handyman in the mended jacket, the one they fed rolls to and gave cherries to his little girl, could end all of it with a signature. That the lease Blake's employers held on this land ran out at midnight tonight, and the renewal papers had been sitting on Caleb's kitchen table for 3 weeks, unsigned, because he hadn't decided yet whether he wanted to keep being landlord to a place that had come to feel so cold. He came down the ladder, he finished the gutter. The water ran clean and true along the new seam and down the drain pipe where it belonged, and not a member arriving that night would ever know it had ever been broken, or that a man had stood in the dark and the wet to make it right for them. That was the moment, if you want to know, when the evening turned. Not with a shout, not with a scene, with a man coming quietly down a ladder, carrying more than he'd carried up it. The gala began. Cars pulled up the long gravel road his father had graded, headlights sweeping across the wet slate, and out of them came the members in their fine coats, hurrying under the eave he'd just cleared, never once looking up at the gutter, never once looking at the man who'd fixed it. He was supposed to be gone. He knew it. He gathered his tools. He went to fetch Lily from the milk crate by the vent. And that was when it happened. The thing that decided the rest. Lily wasn't on the crate. She'd wandered, the way 7-year-olds do, drawn by the light, to the mouth of the service hall, where it opened near the grand foyer. She stood there at the boundary between the two worlds, one small girl in a second-hand coat, staring up at a chandelier that hung like a frozen fountain of light. She had taken the crown back out of her pocket. She held it in both hands, looking at it, looking up at all that gold, as if measuring the one against the other. And Blake found her there. Caleb came around the corner just in time to hear it. Not shouted, level, precise, the worst kind. You can't be here. Blake's hand closed around the child's thin upper arm, not hard, but not gentle, turning her, steering her back toward the service dark. This area is for members. Where is your... He looked up, saw Caleb. There you are. I told you to be gone. I find your child wandering into the foyer during a private event. Do you understand what that looks like? Do you understand who is in that room? Let go of her arm, Caleb said. Something in his voice. Blake let go. But he wasn't finished. He was a man who had to finish. This is exactly the problem, he said, gesturing with the tablet at all of it. The child, the jacket, the tools in Caleb's hand. This is what I'm cleaning up. The club has an image. People pay a great deal of money for that image. And it does not include a maintenance man's daughter gawking at the chandeliers in a paper hat like some. He searched for the word, and found the cruelest available one, delivered flat, like some little beggar with her nose against the glass. The service hall had gone silent. Rosa in the doorway, linens forgotten in her arms. Danny with the water still running behind him. Priya, her hand at her mouth. Lily's face crumpled. She looked at the crown in her hands. And then, before her father could stop her, she crossed to the big steel trash bin by the loading door, and she dropped it in. The gold-painted crown, the crooked points, the round-tip scissor work of a whole afternoon. She dropped it in the trash where a thing goes when someone has taught you it is worthless. And she wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist and she said, very quietly, in a voice much too old for her, "It's okay, Daddy. It was ugly anyway." There are moments a father does not recover from. That was one. Caleb set down his tools, He walked to the bin, and he reached in, past the coffee grounds and the wet paper, and he lifted out the paper crown, and he shook it clean, and he did not look at Blake at all. He knelt down in front of his daughter on the wet concrete of the service hall, at the level of her eyes. "Listen to me," he said, low, only for her. "This is the best crown I have ever seen. You made it with your own hands, and there is not one thing in that whole shining room worth more than a thing a person made with love. You hear me? Not the chandelier, not the marble, not any of it." He folded it, gentle, along her own seams, and he tucked it into his own breast pocket, over his heart, where Anna's crooked stitches held the collar together. "I'll carry it right here, until you're ready to wear it again. And you will be." Then he stood, and he took her hand, and he walked her out into the rain. They didn't have an umbrella. The old one, the good one, had bent its spokes in a March wind, and Caleb hadn't gotten around to replacing it. So he took off the work jacket, the mended jacket, and he held it over both their heads as best he could, and they walked across the great parking lot, toward the far dark corner, where an 11-year handyman was permitted to leave his old truck, out past all the gleaming cars. The rain came down harder. The gala light glowed warm and gold behind them, laughter spilling out each time the door opened, the sound of a world they had just been thrown out of. Caleb's shirt soaked through. Lily's small boots squeaked once on the wet pavement and then were quiet. They reached the truck. He got the door open, got her up onto the bench seat, cranked the heater that took its time, and then he came around and sat behind the wheel and did not start the engine. He just sat there, hands on the wheel, water running off his chin, looking at nothing. The unsigned lease renewal was on his kitchen table 8 miles away. Midnight was 3 hours off, and he was tired. So tired. In the particular way of a man who has been strong for a long time, with no one to be strong for him. Beside him, Lily was quiet. Then she reached over, and she put her small hand on top of his big one on the wheel. And she asked him the question that turned the whole night on its hinge. "Daddy," she said, "are you going back in?" He looked at her. "What, Bug?" "Miss Rosa," she said, "and Danny, and the roll lady. Are they going to be okay?" Her brow was furrowed with a worry too large for her. That man was mean to them too. I heard him. Through the door. He's going to make them go away. She looked down at their 2 hands. Somebody should help them, but everybody's scared of him. A pause. "Are you scared of him, Daddy?" And Caleb sat in the dark truck and understood. The way you understand a thing you have known all along. That his daughter had just handed him back something he'd dropped. Not the crown. The other thing. The thing Anna used to carry for him when he was too weary to carry it himself. The knowing of what a man is for. He thought about Anna, then. About the crooked stitches in his collar. She'd never been able to sew straight, and she'd laughed about it, and she'd mended his jacket anyway, over and over, because he wouldn't buy a new one, because he was who he was. And she used to say to him, in the good years and the hard ones both, when he'd hesitate at the edge of some kindness that would cost him, "Caleb, it doesn't count if it's easy. It only counts when it costs you something. That's the only kind that travels." He turned the key, but he didn't put it in gear. "No, Bug," he said. "I'm not scared of him." He reached into his breast pocket and took out the folded paper crown and set it, careful, on the dashboard where the heater vent could dry it. "And yes, I'm going back in." He drove the 8 miles home. Lily fell asleep against the door with the heater blowing warm. He carried her in and put her to bed, and he stood a long moment in the kitchen doorway looking at the lease renewal on the table. 3 weeks unsigned, the pen sitting on top of it where he'd left it. He did not sign it. Instead, he picked up the telephone and he called the one number he'd kept from the old days. The man his father had trusted. The man who'd drawn up the original lease and knew every clause of it by heart. An old lawyer named Okafor, who answered on the 4th ring with sleep in his voice, and came awake fast when he heard whose voice it was. "Caleb," Okafor said, "it's late for you, son. Everything all right?" "The Hollow Creek lease," Caleb said. "It runs out at midnight tonight. You told me once when my father signed it, there was a clause about what happens if I don't renew." A silence on the line. Then, carefully, the reversion clause. At the end of the term, if the ground lease isn't renewed, Everything built on the land, every improvement, the whole facility, reverts to the landowner. To you. That's you, Caleb. Free and clear. It was your father's protection. He never trusted men who build on other men's dirt. Okafor's voice sharpened, fully awake now. Are you telling me you're letting it lapse? Son, do you understand what that facility is worth? I understand, Caleb said. And then, quietly, I'm not letting it lapse. I'm taking it back, and I'm going to need you to draw up some new papers tonight. Some employment papers, and a notice of ownership. And I'm going to need you to meet me there tomorrow morning, before the club opens, with a copy of that reversion clause in your hand. Another silence. And then old Okafor, who had known Caleb's father, and known Caleb as a boy, and known Anna, said a thing that wasn't in any legal book. Your father would be proud of you, he said. But that's not why you're doing it, is it? No, Caleb said. I'm doing it because a 7-year-old asked me who was going to help them, and I couldn't think of a single good reason it shouldn't be me. He looked out the dark window toward the town, toward the 8 miles of it, toward the club sitting on his land, with its lights burning bright over people who had no idea. Kindness came to us at a service door tonight, Okafor, when nobody had to give it. I've been on the receiving end of it for 2 years and never once paid it back. I aim to pay it back, that's all. He hung up. He went and stood in Lily's doorway and watched her sleep. And somewhere out past the town, at the top of a long gravel road his father had graded with his own hands, the last car of the gala pulled away, and the great glass building went dark, and midnight came, and the land changed hands as quiet as the rain, and not one soul at Hollow Creek Country Club knew that the world had turned entirely over while they slept. Morning came clear and cold, the rain blown off, the greens steaming faint in the low sun. Caleb dressed Lily in her school clothes and made her cocoa, and told her they had one stop to make first. He put on the work jacket, the mended one, and from the dashboard of the truck he took the paper crown, dry now, and he tucked it back into his breast pocket over his heart. Lily watched him do it and said nothing, but her hand found his, and this time it was she who held on and did not let go. They drove the long gravel road up to the club. Old Okafor was already there in his gray coat, a leather folder under his arm, standing beside the grand front doors where a handyman had never once been permitted to enter. The staff were arriving through the service door in the back, the way they always had, heads down against the morning chill. Rosa, Lanny, Priya, and a dozen others, the cooks and the groundskeepers, and the girl who ran the front desk, who had once told Lily her crown was pretty. And then Blake's car pulled up, precise, on time, and Blake got out with his tablet and his level gaze, and he stopped when he saw the man in the work jacket standing at his front doors with a child and an old man in a gray coat. You, Blake said. Managerial. Precise. The service entrance is around the... Mr. Blake. Okafor stepped forward and opened his leather folder. My name is Okafor. I represent the owner of this property. All of it. The land, and as of 1 minute past midnight last night, every structure standing upon it. Under the reversion clause of the ground lease your employers signed and failed to renew, title to this entire facility has passed, free and clear, to my client. He turned the folder so Blake could see the seal, the signatures, the old and heavy weight of the law. You are, as of this morning, no longer the manager of anything. You're a guest. And whether you remain even that is entirely at the discretion of the owner. Blake's face did a slow and complicated thing. He looked at the papers. He looked at the old lawyer. And then, because a man like Blake always needs the owner to be someone, needs the power to have a proper face, he looked past them both, searching the empty drive for the important man who must surely be arriving in an important car. And who, Blake said, is the owner? Caleb stepped forward. Just one step. The mended jacket, the tired eyes, the daughter's hand in his. Morning, Blake, he said. The wet slate held the silence like a held breath. Blake's mouth opened, closed. The tablet hung useless in his hand. The staff, gathering now at the corner of the building, drawn by something in the air, went very still. You, Blake said again, but it was a different word now, smaller. Me, Caleb agreed. The maintenance man, The one you told to be gone before the members came. The one whose daughter you called a beggar with her nose against your glass. He said it without heat. That was the thing that made Blake go pale. There was no heat in it at all. Just the plain, flat truth. The way Blake himself had always dealt it. Turns out the glass was mine. And the marble. And the chandelier. And the ground you've been standing on for 3 years, telling good people they were furniture. He paused. The gutter too. I fixed that last night, before you threw us out. You're welcome for it. Blake found some remnant of himself. Whatever you think this changes, he said, and his voice was working hard to stay level now. This facility requires professional management. You can't run a club like this. You're a... And he stopped himself. At last. One word too late. A handyman, Caleb finished for him. Yes, I fix things. And you've made me a whole building of things that need fixing. He looked at Blake for a long moment, and what was in his face wasn't triumph. Lily was watching. He would not teach her triumph. You're not fired, Blake. A man doesn't come into a thing like this and start throwing people out into the cold. I learned last night how that feels, from the receiving end, and I wouldn't wish it on you. Blake blinked, caught off guard by mercy, which he had no defense against. You can stay on. Same wages, but not as manager, as staff. And you'll answer to the person I'm about to put in charge. And you'll learn from her how this place is going to be run from now on. Or you'll find your own way to the county road. That's your choice, and it's more of one than you gave anybody. He turned from Blake as if he were already finished, and he crossed to where the staff stood clustered at the corner of the building. And here, at last, something in his weathered face gave way toward warmth. Rosa, he said. The old woman came forward, her cracked hands twisting in her apron, not understanding yet, afraid the way people who have been poor a long time are always a little afraid when the powerful call their name. 19 years you've kept this place in clean linen, Caleb said. 19 years, and last night, when a strange little girl came through your door, cold and shy, you got down on your bad knees to tell her that her crown was the finest you'd ever seen. His voice caught, and he let it. You didn't know who I was. That's the whole point. You were kind, when kindness bought you nothing. He took Okafor's folder and drew out a single page. You're not running the laundry anymore, Rosa. You're running Hollow Creek. You'll be the manager of this club, because in 19 years you've learned every honest thing about how it works, and there's not a cruel bone in your whole tired body, and that's the only qualification I care about. Rosa put both cracked hands over her mouth. She could not speak. She did not have to. Behind her, someone was crying, quietly, and it might have been Priya. Priya, Caleb turned to her. Your mother's medicine comes out of this job. I heard him tell you to update your resume. You won't need to. You'll keep the books, at a wage that a person can actually live on. And there's a fund I'm setting up for the staff and their families, for medicine and emergencies, and the things that come, and you'll run it. Because you're the one who slipped a stranger 2 warm rolls when you thought no one was looking. He almost smiled. I ate them in the truck. They were good. Thank you. Danny, the young dishwasher straightened, sleeves still damp. You gave my girl a cherry in a paper cup and told her it was a secret. You're saving for community college. The club's going to pay for it. Full. On one condition. That when you're done, you come back and you remember, on the hard days, exactly how it felt to be 19 and scrubbing pots and dreaming of something more. And you're kind to the next one who's standing where you're standing now. He went down the line. The cooks, the groundskeepers, the girl at the front desk who'd called a paper crown pretty. Everyone who had, in the small, unwitnessed hours of ordinary days, chosen decency when it cost them and bought them nothing. He renewed them all. Every kindness answered, and the ones who had been cruel and careless he did not throw to the cold, but neither did he lift them up, and they understood, standing there in the clear, cold morning, exactly what the difference had been, and exactly what it had always been worth. And when he was done, he came back to where Lily stood, small and wide-eyed, watching her father remake a whole world before breakfast. He knelt down in front of her, there on the grand front step where handymen were never allowed. You asked me last night if somebody was going to help them, he said. You remember? She nodded. Somebody did. He reached into his breast pocket, over Anna's crooked stitches, and he drew out the paper crown. The gold-painted points a little crooked, dry now and whole, and it was because a queen I know told me to. He set it on her dark hair, gentle, straightening the tilt of it. There, right where it belongs. And if anybody in this whole place, ever again, tells you it looks ridiculous, you send them to the owner. He has some strong feelings on the subject. Lily reached up and touched the crown. And then she looked around at all of it. The greens and the great glass building and the chandelier she could see faintly through the doors. And she looked at Rosa weeping into her apron, and Danny grinning like the sun, and Priya with her hand pressed to her heart. And she did not put the crown back in her pocket. She wore it, out in the open, in the cold, bright morning, on land that her family had held for 100 years. She wore her crooked golden crown, and she was not ashamed, and she never would be again. In the years that came after, Caleb kept fixing things. He didn't move into an office. He didn't buy fine coats. He kept the mended work jacket with the crooked stitches, because Anna's hands had made them, and because a man ought to remember where he comes from, even after he's found out he was standing on it the whole time. He'd walk the greens in the early morning, before the members came, and check the gutters himself, out of habit, out of love. And on the days when the ache of missing her came up strong, he'd take the folded thing from his pocket and remember a night in the rain, and a small hand on his Marta's, on the wheel, and a question that had turned him back toward the light. Because here is the truth of it, the thing he understood at last. Driving home through the dark with a sleeping child and an unsigned paper on his kitchen table. He never wanted to own anything. Not the land, not the club, not the chandelier that hung burning over the marble. All the years he'd worked at the service door and been looked straight through, he had wanted only one thing, the smallest and the largest thing there is. He wanted somebody to hold the door, and when at last he found himself holding all the doors in the world, he understood what they were for. Not to close on people, to open, to let the cold ones in from the rain, and to send them back out warm, carrying the thing that had been given them, so that it might reach further than they'd ever know. For kindness travels farther than we think. It travels down service halls and across wet parking lots and through the years, and it comes back, when you least expect it, wearing a crooked paper crown.